Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 24 of the Board Game Specialists. I am Melanie.
I'm Carla.
And on this episode, we're going to be talking about our top 9 multi-use card games, which is a mechanism or something that's using games that I absolutely love. I don't know why, just as soon as a game does that, it's kind of like, okay, this is so cool. Now, before we get into that, Carla, what have you been playing lately?
I played the Runsega series. So what that is the Shipwrights of the North, the Raiders of the North, and the Explorers of the North series by Shem Phillips.
Nice. So like you played all three?
And what the Runsega does is it ties them all together, and you have to it's really cool. He does that with the West series too, which I have, but I haven't got to play the whole. It's called the Tomb Saga series in that one. But Ashley bought all these games. Well, she bought the Raiders of the North Sea when we were at Gobfest. She got like the player mat and the whole thing.
Oh, nice.
And then she bought these other games. And then she's like, oh, can you pick up this other expansion for me? It's Runesega. And I'm like, I knew what it was. I'm like, it's not actually an expansion. It just kind of puts them all together in a campaign. And you play them all in a row. And then there's a final winner. And you collect these rune stones throughout each game that will help you in the next game. Cool. So we played through that little series, and it was really fun. And it was quick. Like you just play one game each, right?
Okay. So I'm seeing like this is a whole day thing, but it's not that bad.
No, it was like just a normal game that you play. But so yeah, we did that. But each of the games were really cool because they all it's like a Viking themed series. And the Shipwrights, you're building your ships, and you kind of have to use certain artisans to build certain ships and gather resources. And then in the next one, that you're going to fight and battle, and you're acquiring like your team to go out into battle, and they may die out in battle, but they will can still bring you some like resources or some points or whatnot. And you're gathering plunder as well to gain points. And then in the final one, you're going out to explore different islands, and you're bringing back animals, and you're kind of collecting these animals, and you're putting settlements down, which will give you big points at the end of the game. And it's just a really neat little series. But that was Shem Phillips' first series in this whole, he's doing north, south, west, east. And so now it gets me so excited to play, because I have the 3 games in the West series that I want to play.
Right.
That would be so fun. And you kind of do the same thing. You have you collect things that'll help you from one game to the other, and you kind of have to play them in a row. So that was one of the bigger little campaigns that I played. I also got to play Castell. Now, this game I bought used. It's an older game, and it's all about castelling, which I had no idea was an actual sport, but it's a sport of people stacking on top of people,
creating a person tower.
Yeah. You create these towers, and I think it's the highest tower. I'm assuming the highest tower would win in these events. But in the game, it's so neat because you are doing the same thing. You are stacking these people, but they all have these values on them. So 10 is the highest. Those are mostly the bottom, and then it kind of goes up lower from there. But you travel around to these different areas of the country, and you can collect castellers. You can also train, so you can get a wider base, or you can get you can go higher up with different people in each row, because normally the main rules are you can have 3 wide, and you have to go from 10 to 9 to 8 to 7 to 6, and you can't have you can't stack 4 on 4. Those are the basic rules. So you always are going to go 3, 2, 1.
Oh, okay.
Basic rules. But when you train, you all these different abilities, you can get a wider base, you can get even 2 levels can be even, or you can even have 9s and 10s together. So it's cool how you're training all these different skills, and they'll move up and give you different things. And then you're trying to fulfill these exact stacks that are some of the local events that you're okay, I need to have a 4 wide, and then a 3, and then a 2, or I need a 6, and then 2 4s, and then a 3 and a 2 and a 1 or something. And so you're trying to do that. But at the same time, you're also trying to, after the 3rd round, there's like certain places where you can go and you can enter this competition, and the only stipulation is you have to have, like, it's a certain amount high, but you have to have these certain numbers of Castellers. So you'll just randomly pick these throughout the game in each of the rounds. And so, like, say in the third round, you want 3s and 5s. So if nobody has any of those, no one can compete in that. But maybe a bunch of you have, like, a couple 5s and a couple 3s. And so you can go and compete in the event, and you count your points by adding the levels plus however many numbers there are in that are required for that event, and that's the points you get. So say you got 10 and another person got 11 and 12. Well, 12 would win the event. They'd get the top trophy, and then you kind of go on from there. And then the next time you do that, say you got 14, you don't get another 14 points. You only move up to 14. So you only get points up to your highest Castell that you've built. Mm-hmm. So it's not like they multiply in number. So you're just trying to get a bigger run and bigger for the next one, but you have different numbers that you need in that one. So you're trying to collect all these Castellers, and it's really neat. Like, it's an older game. It's not talked about a whole lot, but if you do hear it talked about, people actually love it. Like, it's such a neat mechanic, and I've never seen anything like it before, but yeah, so those are a couple games I've been playing. What about you?
So I managed to coerce Patrick into playing a couple of games with me one afternoon. And it was great. Honestly, like, they fight playing so much because they just want to play video games. But once they do get playing, like, they enjoy them. Yeah. So the first game we played was Cacao, which was so cool. And this was a game that I had purchased secondhand. I had heard about it. I had never played it. It looked interesting. And it's super neat. So you have these tiles that you're playing. So it's a tile placement game. And each player has a different color. So if you're the red players, you get all of the red tiles. And each of your tiles has like a little village hut. And it's going to have, I think, 4 villagers on the sides of this hut. So one side could have 3, one side would have 1, and then 2 sides are going to have none. Or maybe you'll have 2, then 1 and 1, and so, or maybe you'll have 1, 1, 1, 1. So the way that the villagers are spread around on your tile kind of varies from tile to tile. And you're placing the tiles, and it starts with like 2, so you have like a village tile, then like a plantation tile or plantation type tile, and then a village tile, and you kind of create this grid. And the plantation tile could have like where it is a plantation, and there's like 1 or 2 plantation there, and you can go and pick up some cacao fruit. Or it has a market, and you can go and sell them there. Or there's a gold mine, and you actually get to collect gold when you go there. And depending on what's on the tile, what it is, and then you'll place your kind of village tile. So then depending on the number of villagers facing the tile that it's kind of sharing a side with, how many times you can do that action. So maybe I'll set mine up so that I can actually collect from the plantation 2 times, but it's a double plantation. So each of my villagers get to collect 2. So I get 4 cacao tree, and that goes on my little board, which is like a little circular board. And then my other worker that's facing down is actually touching a market, and I get to sell one of them. And depending on what the market price is set up over there and how much I get from it. And then so I get to sell the cacao tree and then take the money for it. Now on your player board, you have a limited number of spaces that you can hold for your little cacao fruit, which is these little wooden bits that are so cute. And then you also have this river that goes along the side of your player board, and you start at negative 10 points. And then whenever you kind of come across this river travel tile and you put a worker to it, you get to move that forward, and eventually it could become positive points, and then even more so. It was so neat, just placing, and every time you kind of create a kind of like a corner where there's 2 worker tiles, and you get to put another plantation tile there, and then so it was, and then you kind of have a few plantation tiles that are face up. It'll be like, okay, well, you have none there, so I'm going to take this really good one because then I get all the action because this is on a blank side for your village. Or maybe you have a couple things. Well, I'm not going to give you the really good one. I'll give you this. This is okay. Or so. It's neat. I really, really enjoyed it. I had heard like it. I like to listen to top 100 lists or whatever, and this one had made it a few times on some people, and then,
Oh yeah.
but this was the first time I played it, and it was really cool. And then after that, I played Costa Rica, and Costa Rica is a difference. I purchased this game secondhand, but it was still in shrink, so it's a brand new game. I purchased it, and then I got looking more into it, and I kept hearing bad reviews about it. Like, it's okay, whatever. I wouldn't have, if I was gonna do it again, I wouldn't purchase it or something. And I was like, oh no, what did I do? And then so me and Patrick ended up playing, and the Costa Rica is reversed. So like you have all these tiles, but they're face down, so you don't know what anything is. Except you see like the terrain. So you'll have mountain, you'll have forest, you'll have swamps or whatever it is, and you're in the in Costa Rica, and you're going on these expedition, and each corner of this board that you created with these tiles have a color of each player. So you have like these clusters of meeple around the side, and those are all the different expedition going out. And the one person will start the expedition, and they'll go on the tile and flip it over. And there's animals, and it's a set collecting. You're trying to collect as many animal tokens as you can. And some of them will have multiple animals on it. Some of them will only have one, but some of them will come across these hazards, which is like a mosquito symbol. And if you ever come across a second mosquito symbol, you automatically end your excursion. Those two hazard tiles get discarded, and you take what's been revealed. But you'll kind of go on the first tile and you reveal it, and then you'll be like, okay, I'm going to keep going. And everybody kind of decides if they want to keep going or take that tile. And then you'll go to the next one. So it'll be like, okay, no, I'm still good, so I'm going to keep going. And everybody kind of goes and decides whether they'll keep going or stop. And whenever somebody's like, hey, I'm going to stop, they take all the tiles that's been revealed, as long as it hasn't been too hazard yet, and that goes on their board, like in their collection, right? So then they've collected those. Now, if you call it quits, then whatever meeple is left behind where that tile was last picked up, all the other meeple stays there, and they can keep going on the expedition, but now you don't have a worker there anymore. So it has a really interesting push your luck element to it, and like exploring these tiles and be like, okay, well, mountains have more hazards than forests. I'm going to go to the forest and hope that I don't reveal a second hazard. And you're kind of going around kind of collecting these tiles as you go. And it was really neat. Honestly, I'm not sure why the reviewers I had heard were kind of giving it such a bad review. I'm really interested in playing it at a higher player count, because me and Patrick played it 2 players, and it still works well at 2 players. But I think with the higher player count, having more people left in the excursion that are left behind will make it more interesting. So I'm excited to try that as well. So that's another game that I played, Costa Rica.
Awesome. Yeah. I've played it 2 player only too. So yeah, it would be interesting with more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's it for my games played. Do you want me to get started on the top 9 then?
Yeah, let's
Perfect.
go. I'll do my number 9.
Great.
Is Point Salad. So this is made by Robert Malvin, Molly Johnson, and Sean Stankovich. Made in 2019. This is a very light game, but still very intriguing. You have these cards that have on one side a fruit. No, there's some just vegetables, right? I gotta think. Is there fruit? No, it's just vegetables. So it'll either be like a tomato, a pepper, or an onion, or whatnot. And then on the other side is the scoring. So it'll be like a type of scoring, like it'll say for every tomato and onion you have, you'll get so many points, right? So on your turn, you have this stack of cards, 3 stacks of cards, and on the top are the 3 scoring piles, and then underneath are 2 fruit 2 vegetables. It's salad, so it's vegetable under each of them. So you can, on your turn, take 2 of the vegetables anywhere. Doesn't matter where they are. Or you can take a point card. So you could, at the beginning, take a bunch of point cards and then start collecting the vegetables, but then everyone can screw you knowing what you need, and they'll just take them all. So a lot of times you'll gather a bunch of veggies at first, and then you'll kind of start seeing, oh, well, what should I start scoring? And you'll take those. The other thing you can do on your turn, at the end of your turn, say you took a bunch of vegetables, you can turn one of your vegetables that you've taken throughout the whole game over to the you can turn a scoring card back to a vegetable. So after a while, if you're like, I'm not scoring this at all, it's going to give me too many negative points, because some of the scoring cards will give you positives and negatives. So you might be like, okay, yeah, I don't want all those negatives. I'll flip it back over to a vegetable, and it helps me with another scoring card. It's just, that's as simple as it is. You just do that. You pick either a vegetable or a scoring card, and then later you can flip one if you need to. At the end of the game, you just, whatever scoring cards you have, that's all you're going to score. You're not scoring other people's. So you kind of have to have a balance of vegetables and scoring cards. So depending on, what you think you're going to score high on, you either collect a whole bunch of vegetables, or you just get a whole bunch of scoring cards and just try to get little points with each one. It's such a neat game. We play it quite a bit. It goes well with everyone because it can play with non-gamers, with gamers at the end of a night, anything. And that's my number 9, Point Salad.
That is such a great filler game. And it's one you can play like again and again. And yeah, Patrick played it once collecting only carrots. He refused to take any other vegetables. He took only carrots, and he won.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that little
he
stinker.
Must have had a bunch of carrot scoring cards, yeah.
Yeah. My number 9 is Shifting Stones. Shifting Stones was published in 2020, and it's created by J. Heavens Rate. And with this one, it's interesting because you start with 5 cards, I believe. I think it's 5 cards, and you have, so what you have is each card has like a different pattern on it and a different score value. So in the middle of the table, you have these 9 big, nice, chunky, embossed tiles that are really bright colored. And they're double-sided, so you can flip it over, and there's a different pattern on the other side and a different color. And it's in a 3x3 grid. And you need to switch the cards or these big tiles around or flip them over to try to get the pattern that's on the card. Now, in order to do so, you need to either spend a card to flip or swap. So if you need to swap and then flip and then swap again, like you'd have to spend 3 cards to do that in order to be able to score the one that matches the pattern. So it has a really interesting element as to, okay, well, which one am I going to spend and which one am I going to keep for the pattern? And then sometimes I would need like all 4 cards to be able to score this one, but this one is worth 5 points. Like, do I want to just give this one? So it has an interesting decision as to what do you spend, what do you keep, what do you try to score. And it's such a pretty game, and it has such a neat table presence as well. And I just like that aspect of it. So that's my number 9, Shifting Stones.
Yeah, that's a fun one. My number 8 is Radlands by Daniel Pechnik, made in 2021. Now, I know you got this one. Have you got it to the table yet?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I played it. Actually, it didn't quite make my top 9, but it was on my list.
Yeah, so this one, I've only played it a few times, but I really want to play it more. It's a 2-player game, and I don't have the player mats, but the Kickstarter version, I think it was Kickstarter, came with these big player mats. It's made by Roxley. It's just beautiful production. But even the little base game is really nice. The cards are really nice, and the chips are like quite thick, the water chips. So what you're doing is you have these bases that you are trying to protect, and there's a whole bunch that come in the game, but you'll pick 3 to start with the game with, or you just have 3 throughout the game. So each person has 3, and you're trying to protect these bases. Well, what you're trying to do to the other player is destroy all of their 3 bases, and that's how you win the game. Now, what you can do is you have this deck of cards, and you start with a hand of cards, and what you can do with each card is quite neat, because you can either play the card, like as there's a person on there, and you'll have to pay the cost, which is in water. You can put them in front of one of your base camps, and they will protect it, and then later you will be able to activate it your next round, and whatever like little ability they have. So that's one of the things you can do with the cards. The other thing you can do is you can trash the card, and then there's also a little icon on top that will give you an ability, a different one than what it would give you if you played the person. And it'll just kind of be a quick one, like it can give you some water, it can give you some healing, like you can heal a base camp or a person if they've been attacked. Or it could just give you more cards. It could also give you a punk, which is another way you can use this card, which if it's flipped over, every card has this little punk symbol, like this person on the back, and they're all the same. But you can use them to protect your camp too. They only have like a 1 health, I believe, but they can sit there as well. So it can be used in 3 ways, right? Because it's either the person, if you're going to trash it, or if you use it as a punk. Some of the cards are also these events, I think they call them, where you can place them in these areas 1, 2, 3, and depending what level it's at, you place it there, and each round it'll slide up, and once it gets to the end, it'll attack. However, it might attack a base or a person. And those are the kind of things you really need to get those out in order to attack more, because you're just kind of, killing each other's people off and like attacking the camps that it's really hard to do if you don't put those out to get some really good attack on the other side. The art in this game is just so cool too. It's steampunky theme, and the color theme they did, like it's like a pinky purple, blue, and so cool.
It's the same artist that did Dice Throne.
Really? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm not usually into like the battle one-on-one games, but this one I really like, and that's my number 8, Radlands.
Yeah, Radland is great. I've played it, I think, once or twice, so I need to play it some more.
Yeah.
My number 8 is Epic PvP Fantasy. This game was published in 2015. It was created by Ryan Miller and Luke Peterschmidt. And I've played this game once when I was on a trip to New Brunswick. My cousin and his roommate had a few games. Actually, it was funny because I got there and I'm looking at their games because I'm fascinated. I love board games. And they have about 25 games, and his roommate's like, yeah, I know, we have a lot of board games. And then my cousin's like, you have no idea who you're talking to. That's hilarious. So he's like, well, okay, well then let's play. And this was one of the ones that we played. And this is the one and only time that I've played it. And I want this game. I saw it once.
I've never heard of it.
And it's a card battling game. So probably best at 1 versus 1, but we had played it 3 players. And what's really interesting is your deck of card is your card that you're going to play. So everybody has their own deck of card. Those are the cards that you're going to play, and they're cards that you can put out front in front of you as well. Now keep in mind, this is years, and I played this in 2018, only that one time. And then at any time, you can draw more cards to add more things in your hand, so you have more stuff to have in battle and all that sort of stuff. But your deck of card is also your health. So every time you take hits, cards go away, and every time you draw, you're draining yourself. And you're going to have to try to decide, like, okay, do I take more trying to get myself a little bit stronger for this? But then I'm taking away my health. Like, it is such an interesting decision making in this thing, because you're literally plucking your life away to add to your hand. And it was so neat and it was so interesting, and I so badly want this game again. And that's my number 8, Epic PvP Fantasy.
Cool. Never heard of that one. My number 7 is San Juan, made by Andrea Seyfarth in 2004. Now this one is, I'm not sure if it was made before Race for Galaxy or after, but it's the same kind of thing where it's just a card game basically. And this one is basically the card game version of Puerto Rico. Mm-hmm. So it's the same theme and the same kind of what you're doing is building like all these plantations and things. But with the cards, you race to build a certain amount of buildings. But how you build the buildings is you need to gain resources in order to build the buildings, and the resources are your cards. But the buildings are your cards as well, but you also have to use cards to pay for cards to play them. So the cards are used in multiple ways, because you kind of put cards down, or you'll put a building down, and then you'll use that to gain resources, which are cards that you'll put like kind of on top or just under it, and those are count as like, you know, like that many resources, and then you use that to build other buildings, but you have to use that to pay for buildings, and it's just kind of so on and so on and so on. It's a really neat game. I've yet to play Race for Galaxy, but everyone, that is on so many people's top 10. Except for me, it's the space theme that I don't know. I just can't get it. I can't buy it. I will try it someday before I buy it, but I like the theme of San Juan better. Not the whole colonization theme, but just the, you know, planting things and selling them and buying buildings, that's the theme that I like in it. And that's my number 7, San Juan.
Yeah, I want San Juan. Like, I have Puerto Rico. Yeah. I enjoyed that one. I have Roll for the Galaxy. I have Race for the Galaxy, but I haven't played it yet. Do? So I have, but I haven't played it yet. So everybody says that it's a bit difficult to learn just because of the icons and all the different icons. And I'm hoping that having played Roll for the Galaxy makes that aspect a little easier. But just got to get it to the table. Yeah. So, both of those are on my wish list.
I just have, I would like to get Puerto Rico, but I'm looking for a deluxe copy, which I just found out that they're remaking it and they're retheming it too, so it's not like colonizing.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that post. Was kind of like, I think it was like the Green Meeple News or something that had shared it or something, and I know. So kind of retheming it to be. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that. Like, the history is the history. The bad and the good is part of what we did.
It doesn't bother me at all.
No.
But I get maybe some people it does bother.
Maybe I don't really honestly, and it probably affects us a lot less than some people.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's easy for us to say. I don't look at it that way, where I'm, you know, I look at more as building buildings and things like that, whereas maybe I should be looking at that way, but this way I'll feel better, you know, having the game with the new theme, and it's going to be pretty, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm an Acadian, so there's like the whole big deportation drama that happened in our history, and I think if there was a game about that, I don't know that it would. I think it'd be
bother you.
Honestly,
history,
I think it would be neat to, and I mean, I guess it's different to kind of, if I was on the side of the loyalist and trying to get points to deport the most Acadians, how would I feel about that? I don't know. Yeah. It's. I mean, until you're in that element, I guess it's hard to just to figure out how people would feel about it, and I guess just be respectful that people feel the way they do. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's nice that they're, you know, retheming some of these really good games.
Kind of answering those concerns, games. Right? That's great.
Yeah.
Perfect. So that was your number 8.
7.
Number 7. Okay, yeah. So my number 7 is Watergate. Watergate was published in 2019. It's a Matthias Kramer game. And it's a game about the Watergate scandal and the whole Nixon administration. I bought the game, and I had no idea really what this was all about, so I did some research, and it was just like Nixon had so many wars and he was losing popularity quite a bit, and the Nixon administration was trying to do all sorts of things to make sure that he stayed in office, and a lot of what they were doing wasn't on the up and up, and there's these couple of journalists that kind of just really dug this whole thing up and revealed a bunch of stuff, and it created a FBI investigation. And I'm giving you the history because this game is so thematic to this. It's amazing. So at the start of each round, you have a couple of tokens in the middle of the board, and you have 3 evidence tokens that are face down. As a journalist, you want to get those evidence token onto your side of the board by the end of the round so that you can place them on this pegboard to create a path between Nixon and these informants that's going to kind of expose all of these things that are happening. As the Nixon administration, you're trying to get these evidence on your side so that you can destroy the evidence and block the path that the journalist is building, trying to hush up the whole thing, right? It's so neat. So it has a really neat tug-of-war thing, but what's neat with the multi-use cards is each player has their own set of cards. And there's 2 actions on there that you can do. You can activate the top action, which will manipulate these tokens and these evidence token. Or you can do the bottom action. And the bottom action oftentimes is a very much more powerful action that you can do. But if you activate the more powerful action, this card is removed from the game. So when you use up your card and you reshuffle, you're kind of losing a lot of cards. So it's interesting, like, when do I activate my big action? You know, like, you can, not yet. I want to hold on to that so I don't kind of lose my cards, because you can become to the point where you haven't kept a lot, so you're a little bit limited into what you can do. This is such a neat game. Now, the original box has like the black cover. They've republished it with the white cover. From what I understand, it's the exact same game, just a different look. And the game inside is the same. It's just the box that looks different. But that's my number 7, Watergates.
Awesome. My number 6 is Duffers, made by Dwayne Wheatcroft, in 2020. This one I've talked about a few times. This is a deck building game, but the theme is golf. And what you're doing is you are trying to complete 9 holes as fast as you can, but also trying to like par them if you can, or get the lowest score possible. Now, you have this handful of cards that you start with, and you want to build up more cards and get like better clubs, better equipment, things that will help you like get a really good hole. Because how you complete these holes is you would like to get bang on the number that the holes come to. So like say 250 yard, or sorry, like, yeah, say like a little par 3 is 250 yards. You want to get as close to that as you can. You can get within 50 yards and you still will complete the hole. But if you do complete the hole bang on, right at that, say 250, you get the card that is there. And the cards that are there are usually like really valuable cards, and they'll be like good clubs or good, like a really neat putter that'll be like a 1-putt putter. So they'll, instead of taking 3 shots with a putter, which your basic ones are to buy, it'll be a 1-putt or a 2-putt putter. And it's just really neat because each card can either be used as credits to buy more clubs or equipment, or it can be used as yardage to complete a hole. And so you kind of have to, you'll see your hand because you only draw like, I think 5 cards, and you'll look and you'll be like, okay, do I have enough clubs here? And I have to have a putter in order to complete a hole. So I don't have enough, or I have too much, like I don't have enough drive to get there. So I will use them as credits to buy like that big driver there that's in the, what do they call it, where they're selling everything? The clubhouse, I think, was where you can buy all these things. And then you have your basics where you can just buy like this normal, like old vintage wood that will, only go like 150 yards or something, or 200 yards. And then you can buy like your basic 3-putt putter. You can buy tees, which will like take off your score at the end of the game. They help you, like if you've overshot some holes and you've used, like say on a par 4 you took 8 shots to get there, at the end of the game these tees will help you bring down your score. For someone who's also a golfer, which is me, my husband as well, it's such a fun game because it's so thematic. And like when you all the little equipment that there is, you also have these little helpers and like these caddies that will help you in the game, give you like little cheats or whatnot. Such a fun little game. And that's my number 6, Duffers.
Wonderful. That is one that sounds very interesting. I don't golf.
Yeah, it is.
Mini golf, that doesn't count. But it still sounds interesting.
Yeah, it is.
So they need to make like a mini golf version.
There is a mini golf game.
Oh, there you go.
From them.
Oh, there you go.
I haven't played it yet, but
nice. Honestly, they really make games about anything, don't they?
They do.
I have a game called Too Many Poops that's about not getting overrun with poop in the litter box.
Oh my gosh.
Anyways, so my number 6 is One Deck Dungeons, published in 2016 by Chris Seelick. And this is a game that I have played so much and I enjoy so much. And it's a tiny game, like it's the size of probably like a tiny Epic game. And in there, you have dice, you have character cards, and you have this big deck of card, and you have like the monster cards. And you'll be fighting different monsters every time. So you'll kind of be like, hey, we're doing this scenario, basically doing this monster. And you'll pick your character. Now, it's either 2 players or solo. And you'll pick the character that you want. And then your characters have access to different type of dice. It'll be like red dice, blue dice, yellow dice, or whatever their combination colors are. And it shows what you have access to. Then you shuffle the deck of cards, and you have 4 cards that are face down. And the back of these cards are like doors. And these are the different dungeon doors that you can go through. And you kind of would, okay, well, let's go this way, and you'll flip it up. It'll either be a trap or a monster that you'll have to overcome. And on the card, they're going to have these different spaces of what is required. So you kind of roll your dice and say, well, this one needs a blue dice and it needs to be a 5. This one needs to be a yellow dice with a 2. And this one can be pink dice, any combination of dice, but you need to reach at least a 9 point in order to kind of complete this aspect. And you have all these different spaces that needs to be completed. You can, as you play the game, get black dice, which are wild and can be used anywhere. You can combine 2 dice together to make it into a wild card, a wild dice, but then that becomes the lowest of the 2 dice you've combined. So it has all these different aspects of it, and any space that you do not complete will have a penalty. You'll either take health damage or you lose time. And the lose time is the deck, you burn a couple of cards from the deck of cards, because that's also your time tracker. And then when you successfully battle the monster or the trap or whatever, you get the card and you decide which of the characters is going to take the card. And then this card can now become that it'll give you extra dice that you can add to your character, or there'll be special abilities that you can tuck underneath so that you have these new abilities you can activate now that'll help you mitigate the dice. Or you can take it and collect the XP on it so that you can increase your XP, because your experience level is going to determine how many cards that you can tuck in for dice and how many cards you can tuck in to get extra abilities. So you can't upgrade beyond the level of experience you've acquired, so you need to collect experience as well. And then you burn a couple time between each round, so you flip cards over, and that's time passing by. And you have to try to get through this dungeon to be able to attack the monster at the end and be ready and have kind of build your character up as much as you can. So it's really neat how each of these cards can be utilized in different ways when you kind of gain the card, right? And this is one, like when I took this one to New Brunswick when I went on a trip there, and me and my cousin played it from noon to midnight every day for a week.
Oh my God.
And again and again and again, and we loved it. It was so good. It was so good. And that's my number 6, One Deck Dungeon.
Wow. Is that also the one you said where it's like all the characters are women?
Yeah, all female characters in this game, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Very cool. Awesome. That was your number 6.
Mm-hmm.
My number 5 is a huge cheat because I have a whole bunch of games in here, but they're all from the same designer. They're Shem Phillips games and S.J. McDonald's. So almost all of his like Northwest series,
right?
Not all of them, but Architects of the West Kingdom, Paladins of the West Kingdom, Viscounts of the West Kingdom, and Raiders of the North Sea and Raiders of Scythia. And the reason I say all of them is because they all use the same kind of mechanic in their cards. And those cards are multi-use cards. They all have, well, not all of them, but most of them they have the same kind of art, and they're usually like a townsfolk card. So they can be used as, you can like hire that person and they'll typically give you an ability at the bottom. And then on the top of the card, you can use them, and it's a different action in each game, but it's the same kind of thing where you just use that action and you discard it, and you just get to use the like a little symbol on the top of the card, or it could be on the bottom depending on the game. But it's so neat because on the other hand, then there's also an ability sometimes in some of the games where you can use them as end game points too. So he has like cleverly developed these cards where they can be used for multiple things, but only one thing per like action. So you can't save one and use it for this and that and that. You have to make that decision. Am I using this card for that, or am I going to keep it and use it for the ability, or if possible, end game points? So clever, and how he sneaks them into all his games, because they are all different themed. So for how he does it, it's just so clever. And he's come out now with his first game. It was just kickstarted a month or two or a couple months ago, the South series, and he's using dice now. So I didn't really get a chance to look at those cards, but I'm assuming that they are also going to be multi-use, and it's just so clever to me. But I've loved all his games I've played so far, and that is the Northwest series, probably the South as well. And that's my number 5.
Wonderful. My number 5 is a bit of a stretch as far as multi-use comes.
Oh, yeah.
And that's Bohnanza. Bohnanza was published in 1997,
sure.
And it's a Hugh Rosenberg game. And you have all these different cartoony bean characters on there, and you're trying to create, like, you have this board in front of you and you have 2 gardens that you can plant beans on, and you're trying to kind of build up enough beans in your garden so that of all the same beans, so that you can kind of collect them and change them into points. And when you do that, so let's say I have 5 green beans and that gives me 2 coins. Well, then I'm going to take the 5 green beans, I'm going to keep 2 of them, flip them over, and now those are my 2 coins, because the back is your coins. And it's kind of interesting because you go, like, the first round, you go through the entire deck, and it takes quite a while to go through the deck. And the game ends when you've gone through the deck 3 times. And we're like, the first time I played it, I was like, oh my God, how long is this game going to be? Because it took so long to get through the deck the first time. But because all of those beans that you've collected that are points now, those get pulled out of the deck, so the deck gets smaller and smaller. And that's something to consider as well, because there's some beans that are not as common. So like the coffee bean, I think, for example, or the cocoa bean, there's only a few of them. And when you collect them and you keep the coins, well, now there's a lot less cocoa beans in there. Can you even build them up? So there's things that you need to consider that way. And what's really interesting is you get your cards and you cannot shuffle, you cannot rearrange them, and you have to play them in the order that you have. And because you're trying to plant these specific beans, this is really a negotiation game. So you play and be like, okay, I got a yellow bean coming up, or a wax bean coming up, and I really don't want it because I'm collecting green beans right now, and cocoa beans or stink beans or whatever it is that you have. So okay, so I'm willing to give out a wax bean for a green bean. And be like, what else do you got? Like, sweeten the deal. It's like, well, I don't really want your wax bean, but I mean, I could harvest this. But do you have a stink bean that could have here? If you give me both, then I'll be like, yeah, I could give you a stink bean. Or I was like, no, sorry. I was like, okay, I'll donate this wax bean to you. I'm going to gift it to you just to get it out of my hand so it doesn't mess up. Because you have to plant the one that's in the front. And if you haven't traded it all away, then you're going to have to harvest what you got in front of you in one of your garden. And it might be something that you didn't want to. And the game makes you kind of flip 2 cards up that you have to trade off or pick up. So it's really interesting. And then, yeah, with the cards becoming your coins and kind of shifting as to what's available in the deck, keeps it really interesting too. And that's my number 5, Bohnanza.
Yeah, that's a good one. I love that game. I've yet to play it with a big group.
Oh, really?
To try that. Yeah. All right, that was your number 5. My number 4 is Museum by Eric Dubois and Oliver Mellison, made in 2019. Now, this is a game with some beautiful art too. Vincent Dutrait art, I believe. Yeah, Vincent Dutrait. It is basically a card game again, but you have this beautiful board in front of you with all these different icons on it, and you have different what are the categories, like different countries and things where you'll have cards. And so some of them can be, one of them will be closed each round and you won't be able to take cards from there. But what these cards do is they either have like a civilization on them or a symbol like with domains on them. And you're trying to collect these cards and put them in your player board. And your player board is a big museum and it has kind of a placement of where these cards should go and how you can move them around the whole game. But at the end of the game, you want to place these cards so that you connect either like civilizations all together, and depending on how your player board is, because they're all different, you might have to like move them around so that those connect. But then you also want to connect domains. So it's kind of like a little puzzle in the end, how you do that. And what you do on your turn is you take one card. And you can take it from anywhere on the board, but except there will be one that's closed, and you won't be able to take that. And so in order to take it, you put it in your hand. But if you want to place it on your board, you have to pay cards from your hand. So your cards are going to be like part of your museum, but they're also used as money, just like in like what you had just said, like in Bohnanza or whatever, as coins. But this way they're used as payment. The other thing you can do is you can use them as payment, but when you discard these cards, they go into this little stash beside you. Now I can't remember. I think it's called they're in storage, and people can build those cards, but you can also use those cards as money, or you can build from there and use the money from your hand. So it's like very strategic in how you do it, because you don't want to put some good cards down there because like people can just build from there and take them, but you don't want to you want to keep the big cards in your hand that are worth 5, because you could just use one to pay for a card instead of a whole bunch of cards. It's quite interesting, and there's they have about 8 different expansions to it too. I just have one, and it's the only one you need because it just kind of adds to it some more like specialists and things that will help you and give you like an ability throughout the game. And it's so neat, and the art is so beautiful. And at the end, when you're just organizing all your domains and your civilizations, it's just such a fun, relaxing game. And that's my number 4, Museum.
Wonderful. I haven't played that one yet, so I'll have to check this one out.
Yeah.
Now, my number 4 is Steampunk Rally. That one was published in 2015, and it was created by Oren Bishop. And Steampunk Rally is a card drafting game where you are building, it's an engine building game where you're actually building an engine. Like you're building a machine and you're racing.
Literally.
Yeah, exactly. And you're all a bunch of different inventors, and you're having this big race where you're building this machine as you go, and you're racing across the countryside and trying to come out first. And it is so cleverly designed, and it's such a neat game because you have this card drafting. So you get one of each type of card. There is 4 cards available to you. And most of those will be engine pieces that you can add to your machine. So you'll kind of pick the card you want to keep, and then you pass the rest to the other players. And then you also have to decide, okay, am I taking this card to add to my machine to kind of build up what your machine and what it can do, or do you want to discard it so that you can collect the dice? And because the machine needs to be fueled, and depending on the type of cards that you've kept, it's either fueled by electricity, which is the yellow dice, or by steam, which is the blue dice, or by kind of coal, which would be the red dice, where you gotta burn the coal. And then so you collect these dice, you roll the dice, and you place the dice into these section of the machine that are utilizing those specific type of fuel. So if I have an area that's like, okay, well, this allows me to move forward with the yellow dice or the electricity dice. Now, if you put one that has 2, you'll move forward by 1. Now, if there's 4 pips on there, you actually move forward by 2, and so on, right? So depending on, so it could be the higher the dice, the more the better your action is going to be, or it could be any dice does the action or whatever. But you also have to vent out your machine because this fuel is clogging up what you can do. So these dice don't go away until you clear them out. And you can use these little cogs that will remove the dice or pips from the dice. So if you had put a 6 and you spend a cog, now your 6 is now a 4, but it still doesn't activate. It's not completely cleared out. And you can go through, like, okay, so you move forward, so you move along this map, and you can, okay, I'm going to take this shortcut, but it has rough terrain. And every time you go through rough terrain, you got to take damage on this little wheel. And then at the end, depending if you've built up your machine or it's taking more damage, then you could lose pieces off your machine and that falls off. So you kind of like, well, that one's all cluttered with dice anyway, so I'm going to break that piece off and then keep going. So it's really interesting how you build up this machine, you fuel your machine, and you got all these cards coming along, and you got to decide, am I adding that to the machine, or am I going to discard it to get the dice to fuel my machine? And it's so neat. So this is my number 4, Steampunk Rally.
Yeah, that's a really good one. You had that game, was one of the prizes at Melbourne.
Yes, Roxley donated it. The Steampunk Rally Fusion, which is the latest version that was done.
Yeah,
but this was the Atomic Edition, so it has both version in the game.
Oh.
And it actually came with the metal cogs. It's a gorgeous game.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. All right, my number 3 is La Granja by Michael Kaller and Andreas Odendahl. This game is the ultimate multi-use card game because each card can be used in 4 ways. Not just 2, not just 3, but 4.
Oh, wow.
What you're doing is building up your farm, basically, where you're well, I'll tell you what the cards do, and that'll tell you what it does. So each card on the bottom, if you slide it in the bottom of your player board, it will give you a player power throughout the game that you can use the whole game. If you slide it in the left side, it's going to give you crops. So it'll either give you like wheat, it'll give you olives. I think what the other ones is wheat, olives, grapes, and so that'll give you crops that will. You'll get one each round if you have a card there. So if you can build up multiple ones, you'll have those crops. And then you can turn them into wine or olive oil and whatnot to use to deliver. If you slide it in the right side of your board, it can give you more income. It can give you more deliveries. It'll have like donkeys on the side. It can give you a pig. So you'll have like an extra pig each round, which you can use to breed eventually if you have 2, or you can sell it for the meat. Can give you, there's one more thing. Oh, it can give you more cards. So each round, when you collect cards, you usually will only get 1, but if you have more cards here and that symbol is on there, because each card won't have every symbol, it might have 2 or 3 symbols out of the 4, and it can give you extra cards. Now, if you slide the card in the top part of your player board, that will give you a delivery. So, or a type of delivery that you need to fulfill. It might have like some olive oil, some wine on top, might have a pig, and you need to deliver all those things, and you'll deliver them to this market. And once you deliver it to this market, it also has this little area control where you're going to place a little peg, depending if it's like a 3, 4, or 5. And once you place it there, if you're higher than everyone around it, you kick them all off. So you're trying to get these high ones usually so that you can kick people off. And as soon as you put one there, somebody's going to try and get a higher one so that they can kick you off of there. There's so many things you can do in this game too. You can buy little roofs that will give you powers, and every round you have the option of buying one. They're costly, but they can give you like multiple things: money, more resources, pigs. They can give you trading goods. They can give you all kinds of things. And then you're also trying to deliver to these I forget what they're called. They're not markets, but these multiple sized markets where you are trying to complete this big order, and once you do, then you'll get more income every round, whether it's going to be money or resources or whatnot. This game was such a good game. It wasn't the prettiest game. It was sort of like a very beige Euro, but they have just recently redone it into this big, grand, like literally big, grand, because they made it in one version, but then they made it in like a giant version. Like, I don't know who backed the giant one. I didn't. I just backed the basic, beautiful one. But this one, like, I think it's 5 times the size of the normal game that they made into a beautiful production.
Wow.
I don't know who's going to fit that big one on their table, but the tiles and everything is that much bigger. I thought it was a joke at first when they came up with that as a stretch goal, I think it was, because I don't think they started it that way. But anyway, I'm looking forward to getting my big copy, and that's my number 3, La Granja.
Wonderful. I've never played that one yet, so
No, that's a good
it's on my to-play list. My number 3 is Oh My Goods. It was published in 2015, and it's an Alexander Pfister game. And this one is so neat because it's a deck of cards. And all the cards pretty much look the same. And depending on how you use the card, what it's doing. So you have the market, the morning market and the evening market that starts. And in the morning market, you'll flip cards over. And then in the one area, they might have a little sunrise. And you keep going until you get the second sunrise. And then the morning market is closed. And then depending on how many cards got flipped up and how many goods are available in the morning market, you look at your cards and you kind of decide what you want to try and build, because those cards also all have a little building on it that can do some sort of production. It'd be like, okay, well, I want to do this one. These are the resources that I need in order to do that. But then it would allow me to switch this into this type of product, which would be worth more. So you may want to try to activate this one. Then you need to decide if you're going to work hard or be sloppy with it. And then with your worker, you kind of decide what side you're going to put your worker. Now, if you go in sloppy, you can do it with one less resources. So if you don't have access to quite everything on there, then even if it doesn't come up in the evening market, you might still be able to build it. Now, the cards that you have in your hand, you can also spend them for the resource value that they have. But maybe you don't want to do that because you want to try to keep the building that the building that it can be. So then you flip the evening market, and again, you're kind of looking for the sunrise, and that shows what's available in the market, and then you can do the action that you were trying to activate and kind of do the building. And let's say you do the building and you start creating these products. Now you put the cards face down on top that has like the little treasure box thing, and now those are the resources for that particular building that it creates. So maybe, okay, well, now these are woods. And then you have the next building that changes wood into another type of product. So you're going to want to start spending these resources that are on top of here to go over into the next one so that they build up. But depending on where they're stacked up, also the value that they have. And it's really neat because there's all this going on and it's all the same type of card. And it just depends on where you're placing the card as to what it's doing and how you're using it. And that's my number 3, Oh My Goods.
That's such a good game. Big game in a little box. Mm-hmm. Perfect. All right, my number 2 is Lost Ruins of Arnak by Alwyn and Min, made in 2020. This one has 2 uses on the cards, but it's so cool because it's such a hard decision. You always will have a movement on the card, so you'll either have a boot or a boat or a wagon or an airplane. And you need those movement in order to use your 2 workers. So if you want to go to a worker placement spot, depending whether you're exploring or just doing a tent action, you need to have at least a boot. Now, the cards most of the cards other than the what are the bad cards called again?
Like the monster
the ones where they're 1 negative point. Yeah, like they're like a monster. I can't think of the name.
Right.
But what are they
yeah,
called?
I'm not
anyway,
sure what they're called.
Those ones also have a boot, so you can use them for that at least. But every other card, whether you buy it or you have it in your starting deck, has an action on it. So it's like either a free action where it'll give you some compasses or it'll give you some money, or possibly if you've bought an item or archive or whatever, you will get an ability on there. Artifact, that's the word. You will get things with that. So later on in the game, when you've bought these artifacts and these items, and you'll look at them and you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to get those things. But then you're like, well, I need them to move. Like if I want to explore up here in this level 2, I need an airplane, but I need that card because I want the things on the card. So it's such a hard decision what you're going to do with them. I just love that though, with, you know, those tough decisions, like it's either a good thing or a good thing. Which one do I?
Yeah, which good do you want?
Yeah, I love it. And that's my number 2, Lost Ruins of Arnak.
Perfect. That is a great game. My number 2 is Pandemic, published in 2008 by Matt Leacock. I love Pandemic. I love the mechanism of it, and I love the whole aspect of it. I actually bought over the weekend Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu, which I'm super excited to try and see how it compares and how it plays. I like the horror Cthulhu themed as well, so I'm excited. But with Pandemic, there's, you know, every round you're going to flip cards and it's going to spread some disease across the world, and you got to try to keep that under control and come up with a cure at the same time. And then something will happen that it causes you to shuffle all these locations that have been infected. It shuffles all that and it puts it on top of the pile again, and that pile doesn't get shuffled. So all those locations that have already been hit by disease are about to get hit again. And if you didn't get under control, things can fall and get way out of control in no time. So in the meantime, you need to try to keep this under control, but you also need to try to get the cure. And then this is where the cards come in. So you have the cards that have location, and each location will have a color associated with it as well. So you can spend the card to travel into that area to get there, so you can start clearing out all this disease that are there. But you also need those cards, so you need to have a combination of 5 of the same colored cards in order to come up with the cure as well. So you kind of have that interesting decision. Okay, well, China is out of control. Do I spend the card to go to China? But how many people have that colored cards? Like, because the one person has to have them all in their hand in order to get the cure. So it's like, okay, well, you've got 3. You've got 1. We need this one. I can't travel to China using this. Like, so it's interesting as to deciding what you're going to spend, what you're going to try to save and keep to get the cures. That, well, you know what? Let's travel. We need to get this under control, and hopefully we pick up a new yellow card soon. And, you know, so doing all that aspect, it's so interesting. And I love that whole mechanism in Pandemic. And that's my number 2, Pandemic.
Yeah, that's a good one. I didn't even think of Pandemic for multi-use, but totally is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, number 1s. My number 1 is London, made by Martin Wallace in 2010. Now, this one is my favorite Martin Wallace game, I think. It's a tie between this and Anno 1800, but I would love this game. It's, I probably would say it's a dry game, but I find it just gorgeous. The new version, the second version of London. Now, what you're doing, it's basically a card game again, and what you're doing in this game is you're building up your city. And what you do is you either buy a borough on your turn, you either draw more cards, you play a card into your city, or you run your city. And what you do by that is playing cards into your city. So say I play a blue card, which could be like anything from, could give me some income, or it could just give me points, but then I have to pay a blue card out of my hand. So if I play a blue card, I have to pay a blue card. If I play a pink card, I have to pay a pink card. But the other thing the cards can be used for is when you're running your city, sometimes there's a cost on there of a card. So you'll also have to pay any card in your hand to play it, to activate that card. Now, once your cards are activated, most of them will flip over because they have a flip symbol on them. They flip over and then they're useless. And then you just have the backs of your cards, and then you'll count all your cards and you have to take that much poverty. And what poverty is these black cubes. And at the end of the game, you may have like developed or like gathered all these points, but at the end of the game, whoever has the most poverty, whoever has the least poverty they get to like remove all of it, and everybody else gets to take that much off of their poverty, and then what is left of theirs, they will take all these negative points. So it's really a tough balance to build this really cool city, not too big, because you're going to take poverty every time you run your city. You take as many cards, that piles that you have, plus cards that are in your hand. And depending on some of the boroughs that you will build, they will give you some poverty as well. So it's a real toss-up between, do I build a big city and then just try to get a bunch of points and get cards that will take away poverty, or do I just keep a little small city and just keep running it over and over to gain points and money and whatnot? It's a really cool game, and I love it. It's London, my number one.
Nice. My number one is Gloomhaven. And it's the Jaws of the Lion version, because I haven't actually played Gloomhaven yet, because we're still in the middle of Jaws of the Lion. Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion was published in 2020, and it was created by Isaac Childress. And this one is so cool. It's a dungeon crawl. So the way that the Jaws of the Lion specifically, it comes with the map book, and you open the book to the map that you're on, and the map is on there, and you put your character and you put the bad guys on, and it's very story driven. So because you kind of go from scenario to scenario, and you're like, the first one is like, oh, you encounter this, and it's like, okay, but this was suspicious, so you start investigating and hunting down deeper, and then you're kind of following the path, and then all of a sudden it's taking you through all these different things. But as you're playing them, the way that it works is you have a deck of cards based on the character that you're playing. And every round, you select 2 cards. And the cards have a top action and a bottom action. And they also have a basic action that can be activated if you're not going to do the action that is kind of the special action on the card. And then depending on what you're activating, some of them are one-use cards. So once you've used it in this particular scenario, the card is trashed for the rest of this round. And you can't use it for the scenario again. But those tend to be a little bit more powerful action. And what's interesting as well is, especially with the character I'm playing, my abilities tend to be that I'm helping out the other characters and I'm giving them extra attacks, or I'm healing them, as long as they stay within range. And so you select those 2 cards. You don't discuss this with the other players, and this is a cooperative game, but you do your own thing and you select the 2 cards. And then on the card, it also has like an initiative number, and whoever has the lowest initiative goes first. And it tends to be that when we play, Lee always goes first, and he always moves out of range. So when my turn comes along, what I was about to do, heal them or give him extra attack that he can do, I can no longer do. So now I have to kind of look, okay, well, I was going to activate this top and this bottom, because you always have to activate one top, one bottom. Well, he's out of range, so I can't really, do I want to activate this one? And that the other action on there was not the reason I was picking these cards, but sometimes you have to change that. Okay, no. I'll do the basic portion of this, which allows me to move by 2 instead of using the top portion that would have allowed me to move by 5. And it's all card driven, right? So, and then you kind of have to change on but like, it's really interesting as to which top action and which bottom action you're going to activate. And then based on what you pick and what happens, if you're even going to get to do it as well. So it's so neat, and it's like controls everything. It controls your attack, it controls your movement, it controls every aspect. Like, there's no dice in this game. It's all decided by these cards. And then, and how you utilize them. So that's my number one, Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion.
Awesome. I didn't even know that was the mechanic in the game.
Yeah,
I think I've even played it once. I didn't remember that.
It's really neat. Yeah, we're about halfway through the campaign in this one. And then I purchased Gloomhaven, so I have that one ready to go. And then I bought it from Lyle, so he 3D printed all like the inserts for it. So I'm excited to get to that one. But this is one that, and honestly, with these campaign games, I like to play those with just me and Lee, because it's so hard to find the player to commit to play and that you can actually schedule time at the same time to play. So with your spouse, it's easy. They're always around and be like, okay, want to do Gloomhaven? So you kind of set up a scenario. With the original Gloomhaven, it doesn't have the map book. It comes with tiles and you have to build up the thing. And that was one of the complaints, that it was a little lengthy to set up because you have to build the map before you start the game. But I'm interested in giving that a try and seeing how that works. And then Frosthaven, which was just released, I believe, is another huge campaign kind of following the Gloomhaven setup. So that's interesting as well, but we'll see. So that was it for our top 9 multi-use card games. Now, next week, it's going to be just Carla. You're going to do a solo episode on your top 9 solo games. And we're doing that, one, because I don't really play solo. And number 2, I'm in the middle of moving. I need to pack, I need to paint, I need to do all this stuff. So we're just kind of doing it this way just to kind of give me a little bit more free time so I can concentrate on doing that. So that'll be next week. Now, before we end this episode, Carla, where can we find you?
I'm on Instagram at Boardgame Specialists, all one word. And you can find me on Facebook at Red Deer Board Game Fanatics. What about you?
I'm also on Instagram as boardgame_mama. My YouTube channel is Boardgame Mama. And my Facebook group is Boardgame Mama and Friends Are Playing All the Games. So thanks so much for tuning in, and be sure to come next week to get the top 9 solo games. So bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks for listening.